Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick, and I'm with the Bicker Bunch podcast, and I'm here as always with my father, Michael.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in.
Yeah, welcome in. Hey, we lived up to our promise. We got it done when we were supposed to.
Yeah, first time.
First time, yes. I told you we will be better.
First time for everything.
I said we will be better at this, and we will be. Today's topic is books and books we've read and stuff like that, especially recently. My dad here is I'd say voracious reader. He says he's not, but the man reads more than most human beings do. Yeah. So, and it's a good thing. I love reading myself. So, I'll let him lead this one today. So, and I only have a couple little books that I've read, and I'm a nerd, so most of them are graphic novels. But I'll let him.
Which is fine.
We'll let him carry most of this topic today. So we take it on.
So I get to bore everybody today with my books. I love books. Like Nick said, I have a book in my hand most of the time. Sometimes I'm reading two at a time. I've done that before too many times, and but I get bored with one, I'll just pick up another one and start reading it, and then I'll go back to the one that I started, and it gets a little weird. But but I really enjoy books, and I don't like people that ban books. So that's a thing here in Florida and Georgia these days is certain people wanting to take books out of libraries and schools and stuff. And if you're involved in that and your children are involved in that, don't walk to the nearest bookstore or library. Get them that book that they don't want you to read and read the damn thing. Okay?
Amen.
The stuff they don't want you to know is probably the stuff you need to know. And also, it's allergy season here in North Florida, and I'm having a little bit of tough time here.
Yeah, but that's ditto on that one.
Please bear with me if I cough and sniffle and so forth, but hopefully no sneezes. I read a trio of books at the beginning of last year that I was in Costco, and I picked up a book called The Lincoln Highway, and I kind of held it in my hands and read the liner notes and stuff and thought, this definitely looks like an interesting book. So I bought it and brought it home, and about 10 days later, I finished it, and it's like 450 pages. So, I mean, I plowed through that thing, for me anyway, because I'm not a fast reader. And this is one of the best books I ever read in my life, and I highly recommend it. It takes place in 1954. A kid named Emmett got sent to a work farm for involuntary manslaughter. He spent a year there, and the whole circumstance of the whole thing, if you read the book, is really kind of bullshit. He didn't really need to go to prison or work camp or whatever for this. But anyway, the kid's mother has long gone. She ran off years ago, leaving him and his father and his little brother on the farm in Nebraska. And while Emmett was in the reform school or whatever, the work camp, his father passed away. So it's just him and his little brother. His little brother's being taken care of by the neighbors, and so he gets driven home anyway to an empty house and really no prospects. But his father had left him a car and a little bit of money hidden in the car, which he finds. And so him and his brother Billy, who is a wonderful character in this book, Billy's awesome. They decide they're going to go west, start a new life, and maybe find their mother along the way, because they think she went to San Francisco. And a little historical note, the Lincoln Highway is actually still there for the most part.
Is it?
Yes. It was the first transcontinental highway in America.
Oh, shit.
And it goes from Times Square, New York to San Francisco.
Really? Is it like cut through like small towns and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a 2-lane road, and
probably take you.
It'd probably take some time to travel it.
Take like a year to get.
If you go on Amor Towles, the author's website, he has some pictures and stuff of it. And,
I have to check that.
It's really interesting. But anyway, they decide they're going to go west, and they got a plan. However, unbeknownst to Emmett at the time, when he got home, he found out real quick that two of his reform school mates hid out in the trunk of the car and escaped with him on the way home. So now they have different ideas. So I'm not going to give away too much of the story in case you want to read this book, and I recommend you do. But Emmett's plans are sort of blown up by these two, and it's quite an adventure they end up going on. And it's really, really a good story. This guy is one of the best writers I've came across in many years. And he's only written 3 novels. He's got some other writing out there, but novelettes and things like that, just small things. He was a real estate, not a real estate, but a Wall Street guy. He was a investment banker type guy, but he always wanted to be a writer. And finally, he just decided to quit the Wall Street thing and sit down and write a book. And it was an instant bestseller because the dude can write, man. He is so good. And anyway, this was his 3rd book. Of course, I read it first because I kind of do stuff like that.
There's nothing wrong with it.
And I really didn't know he had these other 2 books that were bestsellers. So, but again, The Lincoln Highway, man, it is such a good story. Billy is a great character in this book. He's like 8 years old, I think, and he's fearless, man. That kid is absolutely fearless. I'll tell one little bit of a story. They end up on a train, and Emmett goes off to try to find some food because they're super hungry. They've been on the road and they're hungry. And Billy's in a train car. Unbeknownst to him, there's a hobo in this car, and the hobo figures out that Billy has some stuff in his backpack that he wants. So he tells Billy, hey, we're going to go up a grade here pretty soon, and when we do, you're going to jump out of this train. So Billy just gets up and waits by the door, and finally, and the hobo looks at Billy and says, like, get back in here. He just couldn't let him do it, this little kid, and he becomes a part of the story, the hobo guy. And this thing goes on, and it is so good. I highly recommend this book. Absolutely.
That actually sounds pretty interesting.
It's a great book. I don't often reread books, but this is one that I just might sit down and read again. Yeah, it is that good. Although I gave it to my sister, and she didn't like it. She couldn't get into it. No. So, books are like movies or whatever. They're not for everybody. But I found this to be one of the best written and best stories that I've read in a long time. I mean, it's a great story. So, being the reader that I am, I thought, man, this book is so damn good. These other 2 that he wrote they have to be just as good. So the next one I wrote was called The Rules of Civility. The next one I wrote, I wish I'd have wrote it. The next one I read, Rules of Civility. And the title comes from George Washington, actually. He wrote some Rules of Civility when he was a young man. There's I can't remember how many there are, but they're in the book. The Rules of Civility are in the back of the book. The author was kind enough to put those in there. And we should probably reread those today, although some of them are obsolete, of course. But anyway, it's about a year in the life of a young lady in New York City who, she's a workaday person, and this takes place in 1937. So we're kind of before we're kind of in between wars, World War I and World War II. And the Great Depression is still kind of going on, but I think things were probably getting better at that time. I don't know. And she's kind of a clerical worker type, But they're out on New Year's Eve. Her name was Katie Content, by the way. I thought that was a kind of a comic book name. I think you could have done better. Katie Content. Yeah,
that's kind of reminded me of Matt Murdock.
Something like that. But
Peter Parker.
Peter Parker, or something, But anyway, that really doesn't matter. I mean, the story is really quite good. They go out and they meet this guy. His name is Tinker Gray, and he's a banker, and he's very well to do. So she gets this brush with a year in the life of upper society. This book takes place over 1 year. It's 12 months, day to day. And so it's kind of her story of relying on her inner self, her wit and her courage and everything to mingle in with these people and actually get something out of it. You know what I mean? Not cheating people or anything, but just being kind of growing as a woman and everything in this New York social thing, and it's really quite a good story. Before I bought the book, I read some of the reviews on Amazon, and a lot of people thought it was more tilted towards a woman reader, and maybe it was, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was quite good. And something that the author did that I thought was just outstanding is there is a watch and a character in this book that is in the Lincoln Highway. So, and just a little tiny link in this thing. Of course, I didn't realize it when I was reading Lincoln Highway. I didn't really, catch on until I read the rules of civility. I was like, wait a minute. That character was, in the Lincoln Highway, and so was that watch. And that watch becomes not a super important part of either story's plot, but I thought it was just a nice little touch.
I always like that when people do that, make their own stories, a universe, like Kevin Smith did with the View Skew, and I mean, the Marvel thing is a little crazy.
You don't have to read one or the other to get the book, but that one cool little link, and there's also a house too that's linked.
Oh, that's cool.
In both books, and that happens to be Amor Towles' house that he lives in today, but he uses it in the book, and it's really a well written and a good book. And the last one I read by him is going to be made into a TV show. It's being filmed now. It's called A Gentleman in Moscow. And
tell me about this one.
And this one, I can't wait for it to come out. It's going to be out on Paramount Plus and Showtime, which I'm not a subscriber of either one, but I will be when this thing hits, because I really want to see this book come to life. And it's it takes place in 1922, which is right at the Bolshevik Revolution.
Okay.
And the main character's name is Alexander Rostov, and he's a count, or was a count, until the revolution. Then they took all that, took all their wealth too. And the man's never worked a day in his life, but he's a kind of a cool guy, and anyway, he did something, which I'm not going to reveal, that really pissed off the Bolsheviks,
which was not hard.
Which was not hard.
It's not hard at all.
And so they brought him up on charges, and he was brought in front of a tribunal, and of course found guilty. I mean, So he, instead of just taking him out and shooting him, like they did with most people, they spared his life, probably because he was an aristocrat. He was a count at one time, I suppose. I don't know. They probably killed a lot of them too, so I don't know.
It wouldn't surprise. I mean, they straight killed their freaking king and his entire family, and I wouldn't be surprised.
So I don't know, but anyway, they decided to spare his life, and they sentenced him to house arrest at the Metropole Hotel, which is right across the square from the Kremlin. And if he ever set foot outside that hotel, he would have been killed. So he's a relatively young man at the time, probably, I would guess, in his 30s maybe. And he is stuck in an attic room in this very nice, at the time, posh hotel in Russia, all by himself. And of course, he gets to use the hotel facilities. He can eat in the restaurant and stuff like that. And he had managed to squirrel away some money, so he wasn't all, he was a smart guy. Let's put it that way. But now I'm a kind of guy who likes to read like adventure things. I'm reading a book, I want to go somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
and that's why I like Neil Peart's books so much, because they're all travel books.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I've started reading this book, and I'm thinking, how I'm not going to enjoy this, because we don't go anywhere. We stay in this hotel for like 32 years. How in the hell am I going to, how is this going to work? Let me tell you, it works. It really works. The people he meets in his life, he really finds himself as a person and who he really is. And he falls in love and the whole gamut of what anybody else does in life. He does it all inside the walls of this hotel. And it is really a tremendously good story. And all the time, all the stuff that's happening in the world, happening outside of that hotel, it's all kind of worked into the story a little bit. You know, he meets people from, you know, the American general coming over to, you know, with an entourage to negotiate something with the Russians, you know, and all that kind of stuff, you know. And I mean, it is just such a the writer again. This guy can write, and it is such a good story. And I can't wait for this thing to come to life. I mean, on the big screen, on my big screen.
I'll definitely watch that.
Oh, it's if it's done right. Ewan McGregor is going to play the Count.
He's a fantastic actor.
He's a really good actor, but I don't know about a Scotsman playing Russian, but you know, but he's a good enough actor. I guess he can probably.
You
pull
also
it off.
like you listen when he plays Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's English.
Yeah.
You know, he's a Scotsman, but he doesn't sound it.
Yeah.
You know, he can do accents.
I think he can pull
very
it
well.
off.
Yeah.
I mean, it is probably if I had to rank these 3 books. Now, I'm usually a nonfiction reader too. I rarely read any fiction, and I read these 3 in a row. And if I had to rank them, I think Lincoln Highway is number 1. A Gentleman in Moscow is 1A. Or maybe you could interchange those 2.
Yeah.
Depending on how I feel that day. Some days I think the Gentleman in Moscow is better than a Lincoln Highway. And Rules of Civility for me is probably, you know, number 2 or 3. 1, 2, 3 if you're going to do that way. Rules of Civility would be 3. That doesn't mean it's a bad book by any means. It's one of the better books I've ever read in my life. So these 3 books, Amor Towles is the author, and I really recommend them. Oh, by the way, the Rules of Civility, I do have a note here. It's 110 Rules of Civility that he wrote by the age of 16. George Washington had these put together. And they're included in the book. Or you can Google it and find them. You know,
I'll have to look that up.
the Rules of Civility. Some of them are kind of, you know, time. As, you know, they're obsolete, but many of them are still valid. You know, and people should read them.
Yeah,
maybe we should start living by some Rules of Civility. That would be an awesome thing.
That would really help a lot of things in this nation,
in this world. You know. Yeah, but anyway, Rules of Civility, Gentleman in Moscow, and Lincoln Highway. Read them. If you're a reader, grab those because they're really good.
Yeah, I might steal them from you.
I have all 3 of them here.
A little bit of time.
The next one I read, I think I read it last year. I may have started it the year before. I don't remember. I know I finished it last year. These are all books I've read in the last 12 months or so. The author's name is Rinker Buck. And never heard of him. He's kind of a historian, I guess. He's a lifetime writer. He used to work for the Hartford Courant newspaper.
Oh, okay.
In Hartford, Connecticut. And of course, when the newspaper world kind of it's gone to hell, you know, he figured he needed to do something else, so he went and wrote a book. And of course, it's not this one. I'm reading them out of order again. The one I'm reading now is I think it's his first published novel, but this one is it's called Life on the Mississippi. Anyway, to move this thing along, and yeah, I know that's title stolen, but
it's okay.
He didn't seem to care. Anyway, what it's about, and this is nonfiction. It's about our flatboat era in this country that I didn't know anything about. There was a time when people moved west, not on horse and wagon, you know, or mule and wagon. They didn't use horses, by the way. They moved goods and people and such on flatboats along our great rivers. You know, and they moved, you know, from Pennsylvania and Virginia on these flatboats headed to the Appalachians, beyond the Appalachians, to Kentucky, Mississippi, and Louisiana, down the Mississippi, you know, and they used these flatboats for trading. There were river flatboats that were floating brothels called gunboats.
Did not know that.
Did not know that.
Floating brothel.
There were smithy boats for blacksmith, whiskey boats for alcohol. People would load up their belongings, their cattle and their barking dog and all their household goods and everything on these flatboats, and they'd float down to these rivers to say they wanted to go to Louisiana, for example, and they'd float down the rivers to get to Louisiana, jump off where they wanted to, and they'd take the flatboat apart and build a cabin out of it. Pretty, ingenious
it is.
stuff. And I never knew anything about this history. And, we think of the westward expansion of wagons and, the wagon train and the Oregon Trail and that sort of thing, But we moved west before that, between 1800 and 1840 is when this all takes place in these flatboats. And I knew nothing about this.
Yeah, I mean...
another thing about these flatboats, they also move slaves on these.
Oh, no shit. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
if you were, say you were a Virginia slaveholder and you didn't need them anymore, but they needed them in, say, Louisiana to work in the cane fields, you sell your slaves, sell them down the river. That's where that term came from.
Wow.
They would load them on these boats and take them down the river and put them to work in the cane fields and such. And the cotton fields, of course, in Arkansas and Mississippi, and the cane fields.
Wow,
and
that's
kind of a sad part of our history there, but one that I really didn't know about. And this whole story, and what this guy does is he gets a flatboat. He has one built, a replica, and he floats this thing down the freaking Mississippi.
Oh,
and he researches his book and writes this book, and it's really quite a good story.
Yeah,
him. Especially today, where all these great rivers of ours are all cargo today. There's like $80 billion worth of cargo moved by river.
No shit. I didn't know
in
that.
the United States. Yeah. So he had to dodge all these cargo boats and everything else with his little flatboat, and there's some pretty harrowing days, a few broken bones, and,
Imagine those captains of the big, what the?
Yeah, well, they actually helped him out quite a bit.
Did they?
Oh, yeah.
That's
yeah,
cool.
they would help him out, and kind of clear him a little path so he didn't wreck or anything, But he built this boat. Well, he didn't build it, but he bought it. There are people that reenact this era, and I had no idea of this. They're reenactors, like Civil War reenactors.
Well, yeah, I could see that.
They go out and on these flatboats and reenact this stuff, and it's really a good story. It was kind of fun to read. He went through some troubles and bad weather and all the things you would expect. And then he would stop in these towns, and people heard of this, probably through Facebook or whatever. I think he had a Facebook page when he was doing this, and they'd show up and when he was going to be in town, and they'd come in and bring him food, and bring him stuff. Hey, you need
cool.
anything? Come to my place, take a shower, and that kind of thing, and he had a little crew with him, and it's a good story. And a lot of history that I really did not know about that he wrote about. And one of the sadder parts of the history was the Indian Removal Act of 1830, where they took here in the southeast, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama.
The Trail of Tears.
The Trail of Tears.
Yeah, it's
they
awful.
moved a lot of these people by flatboat too.
That's awful.
So that got my interest piqued again, As this author says, Rinker Buck says, one good book should lead you to another.
Yes.
And it did. It led me to a book called Unworthy Republic. And it's all about, when I was in school, we learned about the Trail of Tears.
Yes. Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Well, it's really glossed over.
Yes.
Like most of our history that we learn in school is very much.
Yeah, you spend like we used to spend a half
hour
hour
on the Trail of Tears. We probably didn't spend 10 minutes on it.
Yeah.
I mean, this happened, and there was this Trail of Tears, and some people died, and oh well, we moved on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was really pretty tragic time, and this book, Unworthy Republic, details this thing. Now, if you're not into history and you're not a nonfiction reader, you might want to skip this one because there's a lot of detail here, but it's very well written and it moves along rather quickly. So it wasn't a hard book to read, but and if you're at all interested in the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act of 1830, it's signed by Andrew Jackson, by the way, who should not be on our $20 bill. There's my political comment for today, especially after reading this book.
A friend of mine is...
That guy was, pardon my language here, a fucking dickhead. Okay.
Yeah, a friend of mine back in Phoenix, she's Navajo, and she refuses to use a $20 bill.
That we should put them all in a pile and burn them and get somebody new on there, somebody deserving. But anyway, that's my little political rant for the day. And But all this stuff happened a long time ago, and you really can't compare then to now, I suppose. But at the same time, could it happen
wrong
again?
Is wrong, you know.
Could it happen again?
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I absolutely think it could. But basically, this Indian Removal Act was propagated by Southern politicians and Northeastern wealthy men who wanted that land to resell it to the Southern plantation owners, and so they could grow cotton. The Indians lived on this land, and they were farmers, you know, and all this stuff about them being savages, that was part of the story that was told to get people to think that we couldn't live together.
Sounds kind of like our drug laws.
Kind of. We were absolutely living together. The natives and the white Europeans who came to this country got along just fine most of the time. We traded together. And it's really a tragic story. I mean, if you read this book, it's like, wow, how could this have happened? You know, but it did. We made the Indians out to be this, the Native Americans, I guess, Indians, whatever you want to call them, out to be these savage people that are raping and pillaging, and they're going to kill your family and stuff. And when in fact they just want to keep their farms and just be people, you know. And but their land was too valuable, and we had to take it, so we did. And it also goes into, of course, living here in Florida, the Seminoles. It goes into what we did to them. They refused to leave. They said, we ain't going.
No shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're not going.
I thought they were.
So
part of
we
that,
had the
just that
Seminole
movement.
Wars, and so the plan was to move them like they did the others. You know, another Trail of Tears, I suppose. But they said, no, hell no, we're not leaving. So they just killed them, killed as many as they could. You know, they hunted them down like animals and killed them.
And then we insulted them further by making a college football team after them and doing that stupid chop thing.
Yeah, but you know
Yay.
they're still Seminoles though. They didn't kill them all, but you know.
No, but
it was really
Kinda gross.
it was really at times it was a little hard to read this part of American history. You know, that is really kind of glossed over. You
It
know,
is,
we kind of
absolutely is.
and everything you've seen on TV. Like when I was a kid, my grandmother loved westerns. So we'd go see every cowboy movie that came out at the local theater, you know. We'd walk down into the theater and go see the movie. And everything we knew about the Indians back then was so wrong. And so completely, none of it was true, you know. And of course, looking back on it now, I think, you know, I'm kind of glad I read this book. Let's put it that way. You know, I learned quite a lot about that time. And like I said, you can't really compare the two times. You really can't.
no.
But at the same time, that is a tragic part of our history.
And
you
at the
know?
same time, wrong is wrong, and
Yeah.
we need to learn from that.
I
think.
remember a couple of years ago, well, it was during COVID actually, your mom and I wanted to get away, go do something. So we drove up to North Georgia and rented a cabin up near Helen, Georgia, up in the mountains up there. And we went hiking one day. We took Riley, our dog, Crazy Riley, up to this, it's called Anaruby Falls. It's really beautiful. They got this paved hiking trail up to these falls and stuff. And it was really a nice day out. And of course, we're mostly outside, so the COVID thing, we weren't too worried about that. I wasn't too worried about it anyway. And I remember seeing markers there where the Cherokee had owned that property. It was all theirs, and where they were moved out of there, and it was kind of the beginning of the Cherokee part of the the Trail of Tears.
Wow.
And they had markers there, and I'd like to go back and look at that again because I really was kind of half-assed paying attention to it. I thought, oh wow, that's kind of sad, And then after reading this book, I'm like, yeah, I think I'd like to go explore that a little bit more and get a little deeper into that, and it was really, really worth for me. Like I said, I'm not sure I can recommend this book to anybody to read unless you're really interested in American history and that little period of our history. But so for now, I'm off the I'm off the history part of it now. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm reading a book now called Oregon Trail, which is written by Rinker Buck. It was his first big novel.
Okay.
And he takes a wagon on the original Oregon Trail across the country. So him and his brother. They actually ride the wagon across the country on the Oregon Trail. Yeah, it is insane. But I just started the book, and right now he's kind of procuring everything and planning the trip. So we'll see how it goes. But apparently he survived because he did sail the flatboat down the Mississippi, so he survived that. But I could talk about books all day. I mean, I don't know how long I've rambled on here, but you know, I probably read 20 or 30 books last year, and I've got them all lined up here. And another one I'd recommend is Martin Dugard. He co-authors all of those Bill O'Reilly books, the Killing books.
Oh, the ones that Bill O'Reilly puts his name on, but has nothing to do with.
I think Martin Dugard probably does most of the writing on those.
I think so
but,
too.
I read this one a couple of years ago. Well, it was before we went to France. It's called Taking Paris, and it's the World War II from like D-Day and forward until we got through France. You know, got to the German border there, I guess. It kind of takes place along there. And how the Allies didn't really want to go to Paris because there was no point in it other than putting a political face on it, saying, yeah, we liberated Paris. Because there was really nothing going on in Paris. The Germans were kind of using Paris for a little rest stop. You know, they'd send the troops to Paris and hang out and drink wine and whatnot. And, of course, the Parisians were starving to death, but because the
didn't
Germans
have
had all
anything.
the food. But you know, that was a good book. I'd recommend that one.
Okay.
Taking Paris, a little history. If you're interested in World War II history, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And I'll stop now.
Okay. I read when I can. I try to. I don't read as much as I would like to. Definitely don't do that. But I do a lot of graphic novels and omnibus, what they call omnibuses, which what those are, they are, okay, you release a year's worth of comic books like individually, and they just take that entire year, put it in one big book.
Oh, okay.
So, but the one that I've read recently was Predator, which is next to probably G.I. Joe is my favorite kind of IP out in the world. I always love G.I. Joe. I don't know why. Since I was a child, I love G.I. Joe. To this day, if G.I. Joe movie comes out, which they are consistently destroying my childhood, I'll still watch the damn thing and be upset when I watch it. Like, God damn it, it's terrible.
I had an original G.I. Joe doll.
Did you? Yeah, I had a ton of the little ones. And but Predator is a great story. It's kind of a little bit of an allegory about hunting. Because what it is, it's an alien, comes from space, and hunts man. He wants to hunt their species likes to hunt the greatest, most dangerous predators in every planet, and that's us.
Yeah.
So he's essentially hunting human beings in this, and it's kind of that, you know, he hangs them up like we do deer. He removes their heads and hands as trophies. It's very violent, but it's really well done. The first omnibus is excellent because it's the first couple years worth of stories, and they're really well done because the movie was actually, it's like based on, you know, like the movie's kind of based on that, and it kind of grows from there. And the second movie was actually supposed to be Cold War, but instead they said, oh, we're just gonna do it in Los Angeles or in New York, and they made it. The second movie's awful. It's just an awful movie, but well, some people argue with me, so, oh, it's not that bad. It's bad. But, and it follows the story of Dutch's brother from the first movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger's brother. He's the guy, he ends up in New York as a cop, and then he ends up in Russia during the Cold War one, where they're trying to find his brother, what happened to his brother, and he keeps running into these things wanting to kill him and kill others, you know. It's a really interesting read. They're very violent. Yes, they are a comic book, but they have a lot to say, and they do say a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of that concept of hunting, like, are you really a big badass because you're shooting? And this predator comes to Earth with a laser on his shoulder. He can see our heat. He can, and like, it's almost not fair, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it is when we go hunting, right? When we go hunting for deer, it's not really fair. We have these scopes that can see in the dark. We can hit them from miles away. We can hit a deer and not even know it, right? And it's kind of that, we might want to think about, you know, should we be really doing this in modern times? And the answer, I don't have an answer. I don't know. I'm not a hunter myself.
I'm not either. So
and I'm probably the wrong guy to ask.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, me too. I don't know much about it. I was never a hunter.
But the lore is very deep in that story, and everybody looks at the surface of it like, oh, it's a stupid comic book. But no, there's a lot more there. And but I've been reading those for years, and I finally just bought the whole thing. And it's excellent. It gets a little weird towards the end. They start going to space and shit. It's like, what the, really? Okay. You kind of lost the whole point here of the story. The story was always, I always liked it when they're in the jungle. Like one story takes place in where I used to live in Sierra Vista, in an army base. I mean, it's Fort Huachuca. Really? It was like, holy shit. And it was a hot summer, like it always is in Arizona. And the alien came down, and he started tracking a human, a soldier, and this soldier's like, what the hell, all these people are dying around me, and I don't know why. And he's an armed man, and he doesn't know what's going on, so he starts putting it together. It's like over like 4 or 5 books. It's a fantastic story, and eventually he has to defeat this thing or fight this thing. He can't figure out what's going on. I won't ruin it for anybody if you ever want to read it. It was made in 1980, so if you haven't read it now, I guess who cares on the spoilers. Really. But it is an excellent story, and it just goes through this guy's trying to figure out, like, why are all these people dying? What is going on here? He's finding these mutilated remains and of other soldiers and other people and tank drivers and shit. It's crazy. And I'm like, oh, wow, I know this whole area. And he's describing Sierra Vista in this book. They make Sierra Vista. It is amazing. I don't even know if Sierra Vista knows it.
Maybe. I don't know.
But, yeah, I've read all those. And then that led me to buy the volume 1 of Alien versus Predator, which is a whole nother freaking allegory. It's the hunting thing, but it's also, it's loosely based on the concept of what we did to Yellowstone. I think it was Yellowstone. I might be wrong on my parks, where we removed the big predator, the wolf. We removed him.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
and the deer ran rampant, and then we put them back in, and now they're just friggin' savagely murdering the shit out of deer. And that's kind of what happens is the predators put the alien, what they call or xenomorphs or aliens, on Earth to hunt. But the problem is when you introduce a bigger predator, it starts to just destroy everything. And that's kind of what it's about. And you're like, oh, I get this. Okay, this is good. And the predators then have to work with the people to get rid of this menace. Like, it's kind of one of those, hey, we done fucked up. Sorry. Yeah. We won't kill you today. Later we will. But right now, let's work together. The enemy of my enemy, Yeah. And they're really interesting stories. Again, they get a little weird. Sometimes they get a little comic booky where you're like, whatever, But the basic stories are really good. The ones where they spend a lot of time. And some of the one-off stories on there where they're just black and white drawings. Oh my God, they're so good. They're just such good stories, and I can read those. I have read them all day. I've read them 2 or 3 times. I love them. They're just some of my favorites. And but the Predator and Alien thing is never. The movies haven't been doing it justice lately. The newest Predator movie is excellent. It takes place in with the Cherokee.
Oh, really?
Where he starts hunting. They say it's his first time, but it isn't. But it's the Predator comes down to Earth, and he starts going after game like bears and wolves. And all of a sudden he starts going, man, these humans are killing these things like I am, huh? And he starts tracking humans, and then a brave has to kind of fend him off. It's really, really good movie. Actually, I liked it a lot. I've watched it like 3 times since. It's on Hulu. Yeah, I highly recommend it if you're at all interested in anything sci-fi. Yeah. That is an excellent movie. It is as good, maybe better than the first one, which the first one is one of my favorite movies. And Predators is very good with an S. That's where they take the worst people on the earth, a mercenary, an army sniper, a convicted murderer, a serial killer, and a Mexican cartel hitman. And there's a Yakuza hitman and a Russian Spetsnaz. I don't know how you say it. They're special forces. Yeah. And they kidnap them, and it opens. The opening is awesome. They're free falling onto this plane. They don't know what the hell's going on. All of a sudden their chutes open and they slam into the ground, and then it just starts. You're like, holy crap, this is going to be interesting. And it's a really good movie. The guy who made it has the best name in all of Hollywood. His last name is Nimrod.
There you go.
But he is a fantastic. He did such a good job. Robert Rodriguez, I think, wrote it or produced it, which he does a lot of work with Quentin Tarantino. Yeah. And he's a musician. He's really real talented guy. But it's an excellent movie. I was like, holy shit, this is really, really good. And they brought in the wolf predator, which is the bigger, more massive predators, and they're hunting the regular ones from the first movies. Oh, okay. In this one, and they're hunting humans, and they're hunting everything. You should see the shit they bring on this planet. It's amazing, but it's a really good movie. I highly recommend it. It's one that, like, again, it's a great sci-fi movie, but it's just, I get what they're saying. You know, I really get what they're saying. And it's an excellent movie. It's one I highly, highly recommend. But the comic books, I've always loved. I've read them since I was a little kid. I remember when I first got them, Mom looked and goes, "What the hell are you reading?" I remember, I think you took me to the comic book store. I was like, "I want this one." You're like, okay. It's so violent. There's a dude being ripped in half on the cover. Okay, that's fine. You know?
But you know me and books.
Yeah.
Any book worth banning is a book worth reading.
Exactly. So he's like, okay, we'll get this and see what happens. And I loved them. I've been reading them probably since I was 10, which is poor parent. I was kidding.
It's all my fault.
All your fault. No, they're excellent books and great comic books.
Ron DeSantis come lock me up.
Yeah, he's going to. But the series that I'm reading now, and a series I've always loved, is The Witcher. And I'm finally breaking down to reading The Witcher. And that is, I am not a fantasy guy. I think Lord of the Rings is the most boring pile of poo. I probably just pissed off all the internet. But I'm with Kevin Smith. Those are 6 hours of people walking, and it is horrific. Those movies are terrible. I can't do it. They're beautifully done. They're probably and they are very well put together. I just can't do it. I find it boring. I cannot. They could have cut out, if they would have, somebody told me they should just cut out the walking. I said the movie would have been 30 minutes long. I mean, so I'm not a fan, but I
went to see the first movie. I remember we, as a family, went to see that first movie, and about halfway through that, I'm like, you know, there's a TGI Fridays out here in the mall. I'm like,
go grab a beer.
You guys can meet me out there, you know. But I didn't. I suffered through it, and somehow I ended up in that third movie.
Did you really?
Yeah, I can't remember how that happened, but I thought the movie was over.
Yeah,
it was like halfway point. You know, the sun's shining, everybody's happy, and I'm followed everybody in whatever Whoville there, or whatever the hell they called it. It was all happy.
The Shire, I think.
The Shire or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, that wasn't too bad. Oh no, there was another hour and a half or 2 hours.
Oh, I know. It's awful. It's just so awful. He like drops the ring in the volcano halfway through the thing. You're like, Jesus Christ. Sorry, spoilers. But
yeah, I couldn't wait to get out.
But The Witcher is that dark it takes that fantasy, right? It doesn't make it all cutesy. It is dark. It is, I guess there's a theme to what I read. I like dark stuff, but it is really dark. It is kind of like a reality of what that world would be. And it's a very politically driven book. You know, it's about racism. And in it, the humans come to this world that is inhabited by the elves. Sounds familiar, right? Oh, yeah. And they murder all of the elves. And that's what the first book is about, the blood of elves. And the elves are starting to revolt and fight back against the humans. But they just murder all of the elves and take their land. Sounds familiar again?
That sounds familiar.
It's a very politically driven.
I just read a book about that.
You did. But it takes it in from a fan. It's written by a Polish writer. Yeah. So it's like, this sounds like America. Maybe he's saying something. They call it the continent. And you got the continent to the north, and you got the continent to the south. You got the armies of the north and the armies of the south, and then you got like the middle ground. Well, who's in the middle ground? You know? Yeah. And it is excellent. And they start to, and what it is, it's about the movement of what happens in it is now you have a human king who believes he's essentially God, and he starts moving his armies north, taking over all of this land, taking more and more and more and more, and all these. Sorry about that. Was Milo if you heard that, but they keep taking more and more, and the Witchers were bred to fight monsters because as long as humans came on this continent, monsters did too. So they mixed elven blood with human blood, and they made Witchers essentially, and they're heightened human beings, and they're essentially ninjas, but they don't like to get involved But Geralt, always the main character, always finds himself in the middle of this shit, and he's like, "Come on," you know. But it's excellent story. The storytelling is fantastic. Guy's a good writer, and I know they interpreted it from Polish to English, so there is some screw ups. Like in Poland, the bard in it, his name is Jaskier. Well, when they were translating the book, they were taking names that they knew were names, like Geralt and Yennefer and all that. They were easy to translate because they're like, oh, that's obviously. But I think Jaskier translates into Dandelion. So they accidentally changed his name to Dandelion in the freaking, which I guess in a way it's the same thing, but it's just funny that they didn't just keep it Jaskier, because in the TV series it's Jaskier, and in the Witcher games it's Dandelion, and they just interpreted it over here. In the games they just left it. A Polish studio made the game. But overseas, he's Jaskier. Here in the States, he's Dandelion. In all the English-speaking areas, he's Dandelion. It's really funny, but it's excellent. It's so far, I've just, once I start reading it, I don't pick it up right now because I'm very busy with my film project and everything. If I start picking, I'm not going to do anything else.
Yeah.
So I just had to put it away for right now. About halfway through the second book, and I love it. It's fantastic. The guy's a great writer. And I know it's all the interpretations, but that's still his words. We just had to make it work for English. And CD Projekt Red needs to stop making other games and just stick to Witcher games. And Netflix needs to not screw up the show any further. And because it is an excellent series. It's an excellent, very, like I said, very heavy. It's a little heavy-handed in what it's about, but it's about coming into a new land, taking over that new land, murdering all the former inhabitants of that new land, and it's a bloody story. It's a dark story, but it's well done, and it's something that I've just been so into lately. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for me in books.
I could talk about books all day.
Oh, I could too. I could sit here and do it all day long. But I'll talk about one more that I just read. Those killing books, Bill O'Reilly's killing books. I've read a lot of those. Have you?
They're quite good. Most of them.
I can't stand Bill O'Reilly. That's my only
like
weird thing about that.
And I hate contributing to his wealth.
Yeah, there is that too, but I get it.
But his books are good. And I just finished one called Killing the Legends, and it's about Muhammad Ali, Elvis Presley, and John Lennon, and how they all met their end. And the common theme in all three of them was somebody else ran their lives. And, with Elvis, it was the Colonel, and with Muhammad Ali, it was Elijah Muhammad's son. I can't remember his name.
I can't remember. That guy was a turd.
He was a turd.
Yeah.
And with Lennon, it was Yoko and heroin that ran his life.
I didn't know he was a heroin addict.
I didn't either until I read this, and I was always a fan of his and the Beatles and everything. I never knew he was heavy. And so was she, though, for a while. Oh. Yeah. But I recommend that book, too. It was a pretty good book. Easy read. I read the thing in just a few days.
Did you?
It's easy read. It's kind of fun to read in a way, Then we watched that stupid Elvis movie.
I have weird mixed feelings.
I have mixed feelings about it too. I can't believe it was nominated for Best Picture, but anyway, we talked about that last time.
We did.
Yeah,
I could go on about that one. But yeah, we did.
It was okay though. It was an okay movie.
The acting was amazing, but
the acting was really good.
That was really about it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But that's all I have today.
Yeah, me too. I don't know what we'll do next time. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure that out. But
by the way, if anybody has any book recommendations, put them in the comments. I'm always looking for stuff to read.
Yeah.
And I like nonfiction mostly, but I will read a good fiction book. So
said I'm busier than hell here lately, but when I slow down a little bit, I'll probably pick up a book again and read and continue reading The Witcher and get that done, and but we're still on schedule for all my other stuff, so that's good.
That's good
news
for now.
Yeah, for now. Yeah, exactly. It's when is the boo boo gonna happen? It will eventually. I'm not too worried about it.
I'm quite sure.
Good old film production, but yeah, that's all I have.
Yeah, that's all I have. Everybody hope everybody's well and enjoying life.
Please like, subscribe. Please. It's a fun thing for us. We continue to do it. I like doing it, and Dad seems to like doing it, so we'll keep doing this, and we lived up to our promise. We'll release 2 this month. Like
Yeah.
I've been wanting to.
Yay. Yay.
But
So, by early March, we'll
Yeah.
come up with something.
yeah, we'll get that.
If you got any suggestions, what you want to hear about, too?
Yeah, I'm always open
talk about
for
it.
that.
Try to stay away from politics, so
Yeah.
I do slip something in there every now and then.
Oh,
but-
I did make a screw up last time. If you do have suggestions and stuff, email it to bluesquirrelpictures@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
said productions last time,
No,
and I totally
pictures.
hosed that
Blue
up.
Squirrel
Somebody hit
Pictures.
me up on the internet and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
that's wrong." I'm like, "Oh, it is, isn't it? My bad. Sorry." I was a little nervous last week because I'm always weird about talking about my projects and stuff. You know, it's a
Yeah.
weird thing.
Yeah.
I'm a creative person, but I don't always like sharing it. So that's weird. But yeah, if you have anything you want to say out there, you can reach me there. I do answer emails as much as I can. Right now, I'm getting a lot of a lot of actresses are hitting me up. So, and we're trying to make a film here. So, I will be a little busy. But until next time, you guys have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Good luck. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.